I see travel as this great equalizer. Whether you can afford a luxury safari or you can drive 2 hours to a very economy vacation, everyone loves to travel and it gets us out of our own element. It gets us out of our head. So it's very easy for me to talk to people about something that I love so much. And within Sweet Success, I almost see it as kind of going back to the PR side, right? Because I'm interviewing the guests and I'm putting myself a bit more in the background again. And really interested in their stories. And I think that's what PR people, or I like to hope good PR people all have in common is we're storytellers. We love good stories. So that natural curiosity of getting to ask these incredible people fantastic questions is really a joy.
You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, welcome back, Slick Talkers. This is the moment you've all been waiting for. It has been so much fun to work with Katie behind the scenes of this new show concept, the way we're doing it. Everything is brand new, a new sector kind of for HFM to really jump into, more hotel focused than it is short-term rental. But Katie, you have quite the story, and you and I both come from the hotel world prior to vacation rentals. So before we jump in, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on, Will.
Of course. I'm a big fan of you after getting introduced by Stacey St. John and then us talking about this podcast together and just kind of where we feel the industry is from not just short-term rentals, like I said, but hotels as well. And what I love about your insights and your ability to kind of share some knowledge to the vacation rental side is you do come from that traditional standardized hospitality brand world, right? In the hotel sector. So where does it all truly begin for you, my friend?
Well, thank you. The feeling is very mutual. As you know, I have been a big fan of Slick Talk and everything that Hospitality FM has been doing since well before we were connected. So it's nice to finally be in touch. As you mentioned, I am a new short-term rental owner. I have 2 properties in upstate New York since only last year, actually. But I come from a deep background of hospitality. I led global PR and communications for some of the world's best hotel brands. That's brands like Ritz-Carlton Reserve, W Hotels, Edition, Bulgari, the Luxury Collection, St. Regis, JW Marriott, and Le Méridien in both New York and in London. And something that's been so interesting to me entering this incredible world of STRs is how much people don't think about hospitality. I was just in a Facebook group the other day where someone was saying, are you guys putting out shampoo and conditioner and body wash? I feel like people have their own preferences, so they should just bring their own. And to me, I'm like, that is table stakes, guys. If somebody has a real specific preference, sure, they'll bring their own. But the rest of us just want it to be there. So it has been really fun to share my experience in the hotel world with fellow owners and hosts. And even more fun to work behind the scenes with you and your amazing team at HFM on creating Sweet Success.
Yes, it's been a great time, to be honest. And I love because the listeners are going to get to know, and I'm going to call you out on this in a great way because you're a perfectionist. And I love your perfectionist attitude and mindset. It really makes someone like me who's a little bit more relaxed, yeah, we'll figure that out once we get to that moment. You know, I'm not super in the weeds of the details sometimes, which is a weakness and maybe a blessing. I haven't seen that side as much yet, but the weakness side is I definitely can not suffer in the details as much. And as I've learned from many guests of the show and people in the industry, that suffering in the details is so important. So you've helped open up my world to more details and at least paying attention to more things and planning a little bit better, which has been great.
I can see the positive to your side because the opposite side is a bit crazy inside of my head. My therapist is probably the only one who can explain why I am the way that I am. But Perfectionism does come with some good things as well, I like to hope.
100%.
But yes, I think also being a PR person, we're so
Mhm.
used to being behind the scenes. We're used to controlling everything that could possibly be controlled for our
Yeah.
executives. We're used to being the ones who are writing down answers while they're on a phone interview to kind of make sure they're hitting their talking points. So when the camera is flipped onto myself and other publicists who actually have a few that will be on Sweet Success to hear from as well, it's really interesting. We do panic a bit.
I've seen a couple Slack messages of some panic, but it's okay. We're gonna have a great time. Before we get back into your kind of start into the world, doing PR and working with amazing brands, I'm kind of curious because you said a couple things early that got me really intrigued. How do you feel right now being as a guest, kind of in the front and center, in the spotlight? Plus, how have you felt being on other HFM shows that I've heard you on, from Behind the Stays, No Vacancy? How has that adjustment been so far, especially now that you're getting geared up for your own launch of your own show with guests? You're going to be in the spotlight a lot more. So I'm very
It
curious. How do
has
you feel?
It's been so fun because I'm talking about something I'm so passionate about. And I think when I transferred within my career to work in travel PR, I had worked in fashion and tech prior to that. The job almost became easy because I see travel as this great equalizer. Whether you can afford a luxury safari or you can drive 2 hours to a very economy vacation, everyone loves to travel and it gets us out
Yeah.
of our own element. It gets us out of our head. So it's very easy for me to talk to people about something that I love so much. And within Sweet Success, I almost see it as kind of going back to the PR side, right? Because I'm interviewing the guests and I'm putting myself a bit more in the background again and really interested in their stories. And I think that's what PR people, or I like to hope good PR people, all have in common is we're storytellers. We love
Yeah.
good stories. So that natural curiosity of getting to ask these incredible people fantastic questions is really a joy.
All right, Slick Talkers, sorry to interrupt. As you know, great partners at Minute have sponsored this episode. They sponsor the show. So every episode is filled with amazing minutes. No pun intended. So if you don't know who Minute is or what they do, we see that we have a lot of new Slick Talkers out there in the world. So one, thank you for tuning into the show. Every listen, every time you hit play means so much to me and to my team. So thank you. But if you are new, Minute is an amazing noise detection device. Not only do they measure noise decibel levels inside of your vacation homes or your hotels, they actually can detect smoke. Not only that, if you're an outdoor kind of a unique stay person or just have an amazing outdoor amenities for your guests, from pools to hot tubs to cookout pads, all the stuff, they have an outdoor sensor that is specifically made for outdoor noise, because I didn't know this, but noise outside and noise inside actually makes a difference. So you don't have to worry about constantly making sure, are people partying at your place? Are the cleaners there? Or like whatever, kind of issue might happen, you can get that peace of mind with Minute at your side. So as you grow, Minute will grow with you. They have an amazing team of support and they have an amazing technology from hardware and the software. When the two marry, it's just a beautiful combination. We use Minute in all of our vacation homes and hotels with our management company, and it's the best decision we've made because we are so dispersed and we are so spread out that having Minute just is a necessity for our operations. So get with Minute, go to the link in the show notes, let them know that Will from Slick Talk sent you. They'll give you a sweet deal. And of course, you know the drill. We're back to the episode, and I hope you enjoy.
100%, because you also never know exactly what they're going to say. And I think that's what gets me excited, is like, I can ask you any question under the sun and can expect an answer, but I don't know your full life experience and what thought pops in your head or story,
Right.
or any type of event, whatever it may be. So I think that for you is going to be fun, because I know from the perfectionist side, you never know what way you're gonna go. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Exactly. I'll be prepared with my questions, but I really want the conversations to just go where they want to.
100%. I love your approach. And for the listeners, obviously, in the trailer, or at least the beginning half of this episode, there's links in the show notes. Please go like, subscribe, follow, do all the things for the new show, Sweet Success, so that way you don't miss on an amazing episode. Got to do a little selfish, shameless plug here for you. But I also now want to come back to your earlier comment about getting into vacation rentals from the hotel side and realizing there was a lot of hospitality missing. It's the same issue that I saw when my parents were like, hey, we have this long-term apartment and we hate our tenants and we want to try this thing called Airbnb. Can you run it like a hotel? The answer was immediately yes. And I did the same thing you did, right? Like I got into Facebook groups and I talked to other people that I had, discovered in the short-term rental industry and kind of asked them some questions. And everyone's just so focused on real estate. They're just so focused on automation and passive income and, making $1 million on Airbnb a year, which wasn't fully the truth. But, I saw a lot of that. And I didn't see a lot of the hospitality until much later where I discovered the Robin Cragans, the Natalie Palmers, the other people of the world that make hospitality a priority in their vacation rental or overall hospitality business. So why do you think that is? What's some kind of discoveries that you kind of have exposed to through media or even just running your own 2 properties?
It's amazing. I think so many things in life can come back to imposter syndrome. And when you're new in any space, really looking around and seeing what everybody else is doing. And even if it doesn't feel right to you, you think, oh, that's what I should be doing, right? And you just said something right there, automation. The amount this industry talks about automation and scaling and how many doors do you have? It took me till I got to only my second property till I realized, actually, that's not what's interesting to me. I love talking to the guests. And this is mostly just, through the app. I'm not there in person. I'm a remote host, but I love learning why they're coming and what types of restaurants or bars or activities they usually like to do so that I can give them really personalized recommendations, not just to the place, but also to them. So I think a lot of that is missing. And you'll see a lot of people who will say like, oh, automate your messages. To me, I did that at first. And there were so many little things that got dropped. One of my places is in Saratoga, which is home to the oldest horse race course in the US. And one of the first bookings that we got for that property was for Belmont weekend. So Belmont, part of the Triple Crown, usually hosted in Queens, but that track is under renovation. So for the next 2-3 years, it will be hosted in Saratoga, which is great for my property. One of the first bookings I got was for that weekend. And if I had my automated message on, it would have said, what brings you to town? That's a foolish question to ask. I know what's bringing him to town. He's coming to town for Belmont. So it's the little things to me that really matter. And to be able to say to that guest, I'm sure you're coming for Belmont. Is this your first time attending? Have you been to the area before? And really personalize those messages that I think a lot of people are missing. And when I travel on the guest side, I can tell you who is automating their responses and their messages and who is actually talking to me.
Yeah, you're not wrong at all. We've even tried different methods of because we automate, we have to with 50 something homes, but I was like, okay, we got to stop immediately when the guest books having a message go out. It's give it 10 minutes almost.
Right.
I tell people 7 on our team, but let the automation hit 7 minutes later.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. It just shows that it's not yes, it's automated and we do personalize it as much as possible. But if it goes out right when they book, that's obviously a big red flag. That's automated. So you do
and
little
there's
things,
nothing wrong with automation. There's nothing wrong with scale. If those are your goals, go for it, right? And how incredible we work in this industry, or we are able to be in this industry that allows those tools to be prevalent. It's just coming back to who are you and what are your goals? And is that my goal to, have a big portfolio, or is my goal maybe to have 10 properties that I really handle with care, and ideally they have a high enough ADR to achieve some of the other financial goals that are a lot of the reasons that we start investing in real estate to begin with.
100%. I'm curious, because automation is probably a little overdone in our sector of hospitality. Do you feel like automation was very underdone in your hotel sector of your career?
I don't think it's underdone. I think what you just said about sending out that kind of initial message. I mean, when you book a flight, when you book a hotel, you get that instant email. You want that instant email. And if it took 7 minutes, you'd be thinking, did my credit card go through? Did they lose it? Where's my confirmation email? So I think it's a little bit about guest expectations. And I think within the rental industry, that's actively shifting. If I think about a market like York Beach, Maine, my husband's family has been going there since his parents were children. This is a traditional vacation market, Saturday to Saturday rentals. We literally, including this year, had to mail a physical check to book the house that we're booking. The rates are insane, but you had to pay extra for linens that will, by the way, be folded on the beds when we arrive for us to actually make a bed in this house that we've paid over $1,000 a night. It's a very large house for a lot of people. But, you have this kind of old school approach, and then you have the newer approach as well. So
so many ways we can take this conversation. But before we keep going down this road of automations and tech, let's talk about your hospitality career with the hotel PR side. That's a lot to handle with amazing brands. And I know it's a lot because we get to work with a lot of PR agencies or just individuals in general that represent a lot of flags, represent a lot of thought leaders or individuals that you really do have a big presence in all of hospitality and travel. It doesn't really matter on the sector, but it's not an easy job. Like, I realize, like, man, you guys have a lot to manage in the sense of how things are worded, where logos are placed, even the distribution of it, attribution of that distribution, which is a whole nother problem in the world of media. But there's a lot that goes into it. So where did you even get started with this? Were you a front desk agent? Like, what got you from, just overall tech PR to hospitality travel PR?
So I started my career working in the fashion industry for the fashion designer Michael Kors. And I was very lucky when I was in college to land an internship with their PR team. I had genuinely never heard of PR before. And working on that team was my full introduction. And, I was starry-eyed and just couldn't believe how fantastic this world was. And a few months after graduation, I was lucky to land a job working at Michael Kors. It was not in the PR team. It was in assisting a fantastic woman who was overseeing the visual team and creative services at the time. And then by happenstance, a few months later, she got promoted and she took back over the PR team. So it was really great for me because I knew how PR worked at that company. And when she took over the PR team, it was really with the intention of making it global. So at the time I started working for Michael Kors, they were a domestic wholesaler. The CEO had a vision of becoming an international retailer, something I think we can all agree they have done extremely successfully well. And so watching her, how she built that team and hired these people in places, and then how I became that conduit for each of them back at headquarters and saying, these are the stories we're telling to the US media, and having my Chinese PR team say, hang on, people don't even know who Michael is yet. We can't be telling those stories. We need to introduce him, right? Or my Italian PR team saying, you guys, we have a bit of an uphill battle here. You're not an Italian heritage brand. So we need to build, trust in the quality and the fact that a lot of the fabrics, especially for the collection line, were coming from Italy. So really that's what opened my eyes to, there is this whole world of PR outside of just fashion. And while I enjoy getting dressed every day, as many people do, I kind of realized the fashion industry for me was not a fit. There was always kind of hemlines would change or bag silhouettes would change, but it wasn't lighting me up in the same way that talking to my international teams or traveling for events was. And then I had this light bulb moment of, wait, I could take PR and marketing, which I love, and go work for somebody in the travel industry and kind of combine those two things. So I started applying to the hotel brands and the airlines and whatnot. And everybody would say, you don't have any experience working in the travel industry. And so I, of course, the perfectionist in me, had all my talking points ready as to why they should hire me anyway, of how I read Skift, the industry trade outlet. And, I believe that when people are booking trips, they're not just saying, okay, now I only need to read the travel magazines. I'm not going to think about inspiration for trips anywhere else. And I had all these great reasons why my varied viewpoint would be valuable. And it didn't work. So I ended up working for a year at a company called Birchbox, which was incredible. I worked with the two founders. They are just incredible entrepreneurs and just genuinely lovely people. Learned so much about tech, about beauty, about how to build their personal brands, about companies going through rounds of funding. And after a year of working there, my absolute dream job became available, overseeing global PR and communications for W Hotels and Le Méridien. And so I met with the hiring manager and I had all my answers ready as to, I know I don't come from the travel industry, but let me tell you why I'm going to be a good choice. And he waved me off and was like, no, we hire people from all different backgrounds, especially for W, who does design and music and fashion. They loved people coming from different backgrounds, and Starwood did overall. And I think that's why Starwood was so good at branding and marketing. And yeah, once they let me in the door, I was just like so thrilled to be within this travel industry.
So what are you doing today? Because I know you have the 2 properties. You're launching a podcast. What's the overall day-to-day look like? Because I also want to ask you what made you even get into short-term rentals, but that's another question for kind of like what's after today.
Yeah. So I work for an incredible travel technology company. There are essentially 3 technology companies that power travel booking. So if you go into an in-person travel agency, or if you book on like Expedia or Orbitz, an online travel agency, there are 3 technology companies that are essentially telling those websites or those agents what flights are available, what seats are open, how much the ancillaries cost, etc. So I work for them, which is a bit of a pivot from the actual heads and beds of hotels, but just an incredibly creative, intelligent team that allows me to take creative risks with storytelling for the brand.
I love that. Very cool. I just wanted to ask because I think all the listeners probably were thinking the same thing. But now, what got you into the short-term rental side of hospitality? Because I find it always interesting because like I start from front desk and then I know other people that came from like Four Seasons that were working in F&B and then went to an event thing and then got exposed to Airbnb, and like there's a whole path that we all take. So what made you be like, all right, I'm going to buy a home and I'm going to put it on a short-term rental platform like Airbnb, Vrbo, whatever, and run it like a hotel?
It's funny how we back into stories after they exist, right? Like when you look back 20 years, you're like, oh, this is why this happened the way it was meant to be, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not sure if that's true or if we're just good at like, PRing things after they happen. But I did not get into this thinking, I love hospitality. I have a fantastic background in hospitality. I'm going to open an Airbnb and do it better than everybody else. That really wasn't like the actual thought for me. It starts in a bit of a sad way. My husband and I were living in the UK for about 5.5 years. My daughter was born there. We loved living in London. And unfortunately, my mom is sick. So we decided that we wanted to move back to be able to be closer to her, to help my dad. So they live on Long Island, which is where I'm from originally, though hopefully you can't tell because I've worked on my accent a bit. But after a few drinks, it definitely still comes back out. Anyway, we decided we were going to move back to the New York City area. It's where we were living before we had moved to the UK, and it's close to my parents. And since we weren't sure if we were going to stay here for the long term, and obviously New York City is extremely expensive to consider real estate within, we thought, maybe this is our time to buy a house in Lake George. My husband and I went camping there for many, many years when we first started dating. I'm absolutely in love with the destination. We know it very well. So we thought, let's look. And there was this house that came on the market in like October. We were moving back on like the first of the year, essentially. And I saw it and I just thought, wow, that is so magical. That could be so great. And it sat on the market. And I thought, okay, we're getting close to Thanksgiving. If it doesn't sell before Thanksgiving, like it'll definitely be there when we get back. And literally days before Thanksgiving, it went off the market. And then as luck would have it, it came back on in December. The deal had fallen through. It was going to be a 1031 exchange, I think.
Okay.
So it came back on the market, and literally 3 days after we landed back in this country, we went with our 9-month-old daughter and saw this house. And within, 10 hours of seeing it, we made an offer that was accepted. And we were panicked and celebrated, and then really kind of dove in and got started. And I think I've laughed with other people about this. Like it's the old adage about tattoos. Like once you have one, you want another one. And I just think it was so fun. And we had such a good time setting it up and like watching something come out of something else. Like it originally, the way it was decorated, that house just looked like a place that like the Shining twins might live in. And I have a very overactive imagination. I get very nervous very quickly. So, seeing that become what it is today, is just really fun. And so I think from there, really became, oh, we're not crazy for buying a place that we don't live in. And that was our second place. We have a small, very, very small apartment in London that we do a long-term rental with. So, you had people like my dad being like, so you're going to own two places and not live in either of them? Like just looking at us like you're crazy. And going back to imposter syndrome, I really was like, are we crazy? Are we crazy? And now we're kind of like, okay, this is working for us. So
no, it makes so much sense. And I think it is a little isolating in the beginning because you don't really know what's out there. But I was curious to ask you this because, I thankfully had started Slick Talk before my parents asked me about this Airbnb thing. And I wasn't even consistent. It was like maybe I was lucky to post every other week or something like that. And, I did start hearing about like Stay Alfred and these hybrid hotels, right? Like the flex model urban operators. And I was like blown away. I was like, this is the next wave. This is it. Not even knowing, being in Seaside, Oregon, that I was in probably one of the bigger short-term rental markets in general of the country. Not the top one, but definitely a big market.
Yeah.
Not realizing people like rent out their own homes and make it a destination in some shape or form. And so I obviously started listening to a bunch of podcasts. I read Skift articles. I, read blogs. I went on LinkedIn and did all these things, right? What did you do? Did you just say, okay, this property looks like From The Shining. We just need to make it look better and find a way to get people to book it? Or what was your kind of process post-purchase?
What's so interesting about what you just said, and it's something a lot of people don't do. I think a lot of people look at owning a rental or whatever it might be. It could be something completely outside of this industry and just, I hate this phrase. It must be nice, right? It's such a cop-out because it's like, oh, it must be easy for you, or, if only I had more money or more knowledge or more this or more that, then like I could do that too. And I really believe now as I get older and older, I'm like, oh, actually, if you are fairly intelligent and you want to figure something out, you can. Like everything you just said, podcasts and blogs and Skift and all of these resources, and most of them free at our fingertips. And just to ask people questions, even within my like small world, it's funny to me how few of my friends have said, well, like, actually, how much money do you need to do that? And like, how could I do that if it's something they want? And that goes back to like, deciding what works for you and
for sure.
And whatnot. But I think going back to the first property, it will sound a little maybe cringy, but like, I just saw it from the moment I saw the pictures. Like, to me, that property particularly was all about stripping away. They had not great furniture and very distracting floral rugs and so many curtains, and the house is fantastic. It's a chalet. It's set back from the road, so you have to drive through this like gravel driveway through the trees to even reach it. You can't see anyone once you're there, and being someone who's always lived in big cities, that is just such a novelty to me. You see like the changing of the leaves in the autumn, and it's so cozy in the snow with the fireplace. So to me, it was like, how do I just like let this house be who it wants to be? Whereas our second property is the exact opposite. So our second property is 40 minutes south in Saratoga. And it or at least started as much more of like a generic suburban house. And there is nothing wrong with that by any means. But I think when you look at long-term rental versus short-term rental, long-term rentals, you almost want to be a proverbial white box because you want people to walk in and say, I can see my stuff and my life here. Whereas short-term rentals, we're delivering that for them. So I think that you need to be a bit more fun and funky and interesting in the decor in a short-term rental, but it still needs to be comfortable. The beds need to be great. The couch needs to fit everybody who's there. The dining table needs to be comfortable for everyone to sit around as well.
All right, I'm back. Sorry to interrupt, but you have to hear about our partners and friends at Hostfully. Not only are they an amazing property management software, they're an amazing team. I've been friends and partners with Hostfully for over 4 years now, and it's been an amazing 4 years. I can't complain because as I continue to grow my business with our property management company, they continue to update and grow their products and features within the Hostfully platform, and it just gets better over time. So with us, we have a unified inbox. We have amazing marketplace, not only for the rest of our tech stack to integrate, which is awesome because they work with so many people, But then the third piece is the distribution is built in. So you don't have to fully rely on a channel manager. You can actually rely on the amazing integrations that Hostfully has with Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, Marriott, Homes and Villas, you name it. They have what you need in order to get your inventory, your properties to the right people. So it's kind of a no-brainer, but I'm going to tell you this anyways. You're going to get a special deal with Hostfully with the link in the show notes. You'll just have to let them know if you love the product and then just tell them that we'll send you. So that way you can get that amazing Slick Talk deal. And of course, we're back to the episode. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy.
100%. And I just love, the best stories, in my opinion, or experiences in people's lives are the ones that just kind of, like you said, with your first house, like you just kind of saw it. It was there. Like you're just naturally were like, all right, yep, this is it. I already know that take away all this crap, this poor design, all these rugs, these curtains. It's going to be a great spot. I can see myself here. I can, come here and I can enjoy it. And I think initially, I hate also the term, like people say in the short-term rental industry, especially on like the Airbnb coach side, right? Like who's your avatar? And I hate the term avatar, but I mostly tell people that your avatar for either your vacation home, or even if you're starting a podcast of your listener, most likely your avatar is a person a lot like you.
Yeah.
It's it is, if you can just naturally see that place, right? The first property that you bought,
right,
and just see it, that's kind of a piece of you like, yeah, I would love this. I would be here. I would stay here. And I just think it's a natural way of how humans kind of work, where we're always like talking about audiences and demographics and things. And it's like, yes, these are all great. And there's a bunch of data that backs it up, especially that, as a marketer and a PR person, that at the end of the day, though, a lot of it is going to be based off of your personal liking and how you want things and all this other stuff. So I don't know.
You're so right.
Yeah. It's
You're
interesting
so right.
to see how it works.
I'm reading Rory Sutherland's book right now, Alchemy. It's a STR book club pick, which is such a fun group of people. And he really talks about that. Like sometimes certain things just defy logic. And Red Bull, he gives as an example, like when they did tasting polls of that, like they have never seen a drink like pull pour than Red Bull did. Like people vehemently hated it. And yet it is like a huge success, right? So putting a little bit of magic, or going back to, like you said, if it's a space for you, like our house in Lake George, we saw as a place for multi-generational families to be able to gather. So a really great way to test that out is having my family there. And, I have a 2-year-old, so I know it's easy if a house can provide me a pack and play and have a really nice mattress, because I don't want her sleeping on that flat thing, and those little touches, so that when we do have people similar to us staying, we can make their experience that much better, because we know what they like. We know how they're going to use the space because we do it in the exact same way. Yeah.
The most undervalued thing in the industry from hotels and short-term rentals, in my opinion, is being a guest of your own product, right? Like you need to check in and book and do everything just the way your guests would.
Yes.
Because even like, I even have people tell me like, oh yeah, like just blocked off my property and I went and stayed. I was like, so you didn't get the messaging, you didn't get the emails, you didn't experience your website for direct booking, you didn't do anything. Like, yeah, you stayed in your property, you probably can find like a lamp that needs a new light bulb, or cabinet that needs fixing due to the hinge coming off or whatever, right? Like, great, good job. But you don't get to experience anything that your guests got to do. So if you can take advantage and have your family there and do the stuff, and actually, even if it's just like, hey, mom, I'm going to lower my rates for 2 nights that you're going to want to book, just book on the app. I'll like make sure I refund you and do all the things, right? Like, just let me know how it is. Like, what's your messaging like? What's the thing? And I don't know.
Even the little things in our place in Lake George, it's an older house, right? So it's 2 of the rooms that when you turn the light on, there's no ceiling lights. It's actually controlling the bedside lamps. So that's something that I have to really communicate to my cleaning team to make sure that they turn them back on, because the next guest comes in and they're like, oh, the light's not working, which luckily hasn't happened. But we don't even have plugs next to the bed on either side. So we actually bought those little cubes for people to use, because from being there and from having our friends and family stay there, they're like, oh, well, I had to charge my phone over there, so I couldn't, or I had to reach behind the bed. And I'm like, I don't want people having to reach behind the bed. So those little things that you only realize when you're there, it's so invaluable.
For sure. Well, coming to a great transition period here, what do you think has been the biggest learning for you getting into the short-term rental sector and now kind of preparing you for your show, Sweet Success, as you're going to get talked to a bunch of traditional hoteliers, your guests, just another shameless plug, really quick, promise. But like Katie, like your guest list is insane. And listeners of the show, I don't say this often about a lot of other podcasts, because yes, like having a great guest is really important. But the way that Katie has been able to build an insane list of heavy hitters is just, I was like, all right, she's coming with a Rolodex. Let's go.
You know what is so wild? I remember this from when that woman I talked about, who I worked for at Michael Kors, one of my first jobs. She is just incredible and always has been. And I remember being 22 years old and looking at her and thinking, she knows everyone. She knows all these editor-in-chiefs. It's probably because she's from New York City, or it's probably because her family has more money than mine, or all these reasons, right? And actually, like, what I've realized now is so much of it is they just grew up together. They were assistants together, and now they're both SVPs and CEOs or what have you. So it's been really fun to go back through just these people that I've worked with throughout my career, who are now in incredible positions and doing incredible work, and are just genuinely good people too. So I really think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's super incredible. But the point I want to get to this was in the sense of like you're learning of short-term rentals and kind of building your own hotel in just a smaller format, right? Or landscape compared to a building with hundreds or a couple of rooms, to now getting to sit down with these people that you, got to work with and get to know over the years, but now are in great positions. What do you think, like a big learning lesson that is from your experience to, shine through into the podcast as you're getting to launch your own episodes with guests and potentially even solo episodes if you ever get to it? I don't know. Just put it out there. Put it out there. But yeah, we'd love to know, like, what's your overall, I'm repeating the question like 5,000 times, but you get the point.
I would say maybe two things. One is, and I started mentioning this earlier, and then I just lost my train of thought, so I apologize for that. But guest expectations are shifting. So from those York markets where people are used to sending checks and, putting the linens on their own bed, what I'm seeing in my property is it used to be enough maybe to give, one garbage bag and one laundry pod and coffee for the first cup and whatnot. And the expectations are really shifting. People expect to have those types of amenities provided for them and provided enough for their entire stay. Is there enough toilet paper for the whole week that they're staying? And maybe that's not true for everyone, but I'm very fortunate to be in markets where I can charge a decent ADR, and that's fair enough, right? Like, why should you have to go to the grocery store and buy toilet paper for the house that you're staying at? So that's shifting. And I think it's continuing to evolve, and really paying attention to if a guest says something to you once, okay, but if you hear it a second time from a second guest, like, really pay attention to that and action it. The second thing I'd say is inspiration is everywhere, as cheesy as that sounds. And so from some of these people on the podcast, yes, they are working with bigger budgets, or they are, storied hotels that have partnerships with Michelin starred chefs and can get you into the tasting table that nobody else can get into. Am I going to be able to do that in Lake George or in Saratoga? No, of course not. But what can I distill from that lesson? And that's something I'm interested and excited about doing on the show. Is at the end of every show, we'll take about 5 to 10 minutes to just say, here's what I heard them say, and here's how I can apply that on the really, really small scale to my singular properties, in hopes that other people can take those lessons as well, whether it be for their boutique hotel or for their properties, their rentals.
I love that so much. I honestly feel like you were trained at the front desk of a Marriott or something else, because like everything you said, if a guest says something once, fine, address it, take care of them, make sure they're okay. And then 2, okay, this is clearly something that's repetitive. or repeating. Third time shouldn't happen. If it does, drop everything, figure it out, because it shouldn't be that consistent. Problems shouldn't be consistent. They should be, one and few in the occasion. So I love that approach that you have. And I think, my hope with Sweet Success and with your guests and even just people listening to this episode right now is that maybe a little bit more hospitality is sprinkled into operations more, and people are actually putting this more top of mind. More than anything, I think, like, again, the short-term rental space is so focused on real estate, which is not a bad thing, obviously, because like we all know, we're in business to make money. We're not trying to just like do charity or, barely get by. But also, like, just because you manage an asset or buy an asset doesn't mean you can't add that extra connection, that extra touch point, that extra design that's local, that has art from a local artist or coffee from a local coffee roaster or, well, a Good Morning Coffee. But, like whatever that may be, it just is, I just think it's not talked about a lot. And that's why a lot of people, like when they ask about HFM compared to like Bigger Pockets, I'm like, we're just very different. Like, yes, we're probably very similar structured behind the scenes, but we're not, like, I don't care honestly about the real estate side. Like, I do care, but like, I don't care enough to like open up a whole new arm. So I think that, yes, real estate is important. We should all make sure we're all making money, owners especially of vacation homes. But I think the hospitality piece is just completely neglected sometimes. And it just can be, hard to really push that cart down the line, if that makes sense. But
I believe Airbnb has said too, like the majority of properties on the platform are by people who have one or two properties, right? So if you have a bigger portfolio, maybe this isn't for you, but for those of us who don't, who have smaller portfolios, and if you have the time and if you have the interest, it doesn't cost anything to just chat with the guests more and to check in on them, to send that second day message and make sure everything's going well, because then you can also head off any problems that might be coming, right? I think there's something called the service recovery paradox, where people actually like a brand more after something goes wrong and they handle it really well than they would have if nothing went wrong in the first place, right? So catching 100%. That. And, I had a small example where last summer in a family check-in in Lake George, and the woman had mentioned to me that there was a bee's nest near the kitchen door. She said, no big deal. The main entrance to the house is the basement entrance anyway. She said, we probably just won't use that entrance. And she did mention that her daughter was allergic to bees. And so I could have just said, yeah, it's a cabin in the woods in the summer in August. Of course there's bees, but when you put yourself in their shoes and think about the impact that can have on their general feeling on their vacation, which maybe they have one vacation a year and this was it. I chose to pay that rush fee to get an exterminator out there within an hour or two to get rid of that for them. And, you're not doing it for the thanks, and you may not get the thanks, but you're doing it because this is the service that we're delivering. They're there for a great experience. And if that is going to impact it, then I need to mitigate that right away.
100%. And you just actually brought something up that I want to ask you on, kind of your overall thoughts and opinions. But Brandy Canale from our other show, Good Morning Hospitality, she was kind of talking about, because we're bringing up this conversation over and over again, in the sense of, there's operations at scale. Like, how do you scale a hospitality brand? Obviously automating messages and all these things, right? Like, what's in the home, what's not in the home? Do you have enough to get started? Do you have enough to get through the whole stay? Like, this is all very kind of not controversial, but brought up, and kind of feels like it's just an endless tomb of the same topics. And she kind of brought up a really good point. It's like, no longer are the days of, I guess maybe, yes, like the traditional York place that you're talking about, of sending a check and having still to put on your own sheets and make your own bed, which sucks. I'm sorry that you guys have to go through that. But it's like, there's hospitality is all kind of designed based on the level of service you want to get. And it just depends on like what sector, like no longer is it economy, budget, upscale, luxury, ultra luxury. It's just like, what service do you want? What are you trying to get out of your stay? And, there wasn't really a conclusion to the conversation or the point, but where do you think that, the industry is at when it comes to this kind of categorization of lodging, right? Like, there's, like I just said, there's economy or budget to upscale, mid-scale, like all these chains or kind of, categories for lodging. Where do you think this is actually going? Because like, again, you have the multifamily hotel, not hotel without a front, like, you know what I'm saying? Like no front desk. They have virtual assistants. There's no one on staff on site, but they're automated. They are clean, they're secure, etc. And then there's the operators like you, who are a majority of Airbnb's, inventory. It's no question about it. Like, look at the data. Hosts are the majority for Airbnb.
Right.
And, you do want that attention to detail. You want to get that rush fee so that way the bees are gone and the daughter doesn't have any risk of getting an allergic reaction due to the vacation. So there's just a different level of service. So where do you think this is all going for our industry as a whole? I'm just very curious.
I feel like everything you're talking about goes back to expectation, right? Like when you pay, and unfortunately, a lot of times it's tied to the cost of the stay. When you pay more, you expect more. When you pay less, I think you're a bit more forgiving. And also, like, how are we marketing ourselves to make sure we're almost under promising and then over delivering, right? So I have stayed, there's a hotel in Astoria, a Fairfield Inn from Marriott that my husband and I used to stay at every time we came back to New York when we were living in London, because it was in our old neighborhood. And there's probably one person working at the front desk. It's like there's no room service. There's no frette linens. There's no bar in the hotel. That didn't matter to us. We loved staying there because it was affordable and it was in our old neighborhood, and that was what we were looking for. But then when you pay a lot more money and you see certain things promoted or highlighted and they fall short of your expectations, I think that's where people get really frustrated. So I don't think there's like one type of guest. Like even a luxury guest, I mean, maybe if you're like a billionaire and you're only staying in these types of hotels, like I think we all have different preferences based on the stay or based on where we're going or who we're traveling with. Like we're always kind of changing. So it's for rental and even for hotel operators too. It's like, how do you just really make sure what you are promising, you're delivering on that promise?
100%. So good. Gosh, there's so many good nuggets, Katie. I love it. There's so many ways we can go, but I'm just really thinking of where the industry is at today, and I honestly believe what you're saying is so dead on, but also the idea of like, who do you want to be? Like you said in the beginning of the episode, like if you're gonna be it, right? Like just stop trying. I hate to say this. This is like more of a message to myself sometimes too. I promise I'm not like talking down to any of the listeners, but like, it's like, stop trying to do stuff and just do it. Like you're going to learn a lot. You're going to have to reiterate things and, improve it. And maybe it's not as you expected or what you heard on a podcast or saw on a YouTube video, but I think it just comes down to stop trying and just start really trying to be authentic and professional. And no matter how way, shape, or form you want to do that, I think it just depends on who you're really trying to bring in. And I think, it's good to want to copy what's working for other people. I think a lot of people talk about stuff they hear on this show from other guests, or they hear on others, or that they met at this conference. And I think there's great lessons learned. And that's why we do this thing called podcasting, because it's such a great medium to share information and perspective, but also it's just okay to do it your own way, right? Like just figure it out for yourself.
It takes a lot of confidence though, right? To figure out first who you are and what you want. I mean, that is hard enough. And I think, like you said, take inspiration from other people. Like I never knew about seller financing until I've listened to podcasts, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, like that's a way you could get deals done. Or, for people who want to break in, and people talk about rental arbitrage or co-hosting and whatnot, like, wow, those are really interesting strategies. Is it for me? I'm not sure, maybe. But, that is, the more we can learn and take inspiration, but then put it through that filter of like, well, what is my like overall objective? What is my overall goal, whether it be in 5 years or 10 years time? And how does this support or distract from that?
Yeah, 100%. My question to you is, what's your goal with your properties? Are you trying to do more? Are you trying to stay at the 2? What's your goal? Where do you want to do?
So funny because Zach Boozy Cruz, he asked me that when I was on Behind the Stage like a year and a half ago, the very beginning of all of this. And like a side note on that, like listening to yourself and Zach and Natalie and Stacy and all these like incredible thought leaders in the space, like it's intimidating, right? And I think because you're in our ears or you're on our screens, like it feels like, oh, wow, like, I don't know, like, how could you talk to somebody like that? And then like you meet these people and you're like, oh my gosh, you're all so wonderful and so lovely to be around. So side note on that, but Zach had asked me when I was on, what's next? And I, at the time, answered very honestly and just said, I don't know, kind of like test and learn right now, like see if this even works. And so now I feel like 2 short-term rentals and definitely have proof of concept, definitely know I love this space and have been totally bitten by the real estate investing bug. So I have 2 markets that I have my eyes on for future short-term rentals for sure. And who knows what will come from there. I'm mostly excited to get to work with you and the HFM team on Sweet Success and get to have more inspiring conversations from just incredible people in the industry and see where then that shifts my goals potentially in the future.
Yeah, one thing you'll learn through Sweet Success is you'll never know what's going to come across your plate through an episode, whether it's someone that listened and messages you, the guest that loved the experience, a listener that you've never heard of in your life. I didn't expect half of the stuff that's happened when launching Slick Talk in 2018. So I know you'll have the same experience where, 5 years down the line, we're going to be sitting at a bar, having a nice cocktail and just being like, man, can you believe where you're at today with Sweet Success and all the stuff that's happened and blah, blah, blah. Like it's going to be so much fun, but we're super excited to work with you.
Isn't that the beauty of stories in general too, right? Like I think as someone who's like a storyteller by nature, like there are definitely times that I like sit back in my own life and I'm like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen next, right?
Yeah.
What's that person going to say? Or what's going to happen to main character Katie over here, So I think it's kind of fun. Like all you can do is like follow the things that like make you excited, right? And I'm very 100%. Excited working on this with you guys. And you guys are just such a joy to be around. So yeah, I'm excited to see what will come. What's in chapter 2, perhaps.
Chapter 2. I love it. Well, we love working with you. It's been super fun. Obviously, listeners know we want all of you guys to go to the show and check it out, subscribe, listen, let us know your feedback. We're very open to it. No matter how much of a perfectionist we might be. But,
I might cry in the corner after I read it, but that's okay. I will action it. I promise. You won't have to ask twice.
I love it. And I also love your comment, like the main story. It's like, I always love when something happens especially in the country, obviously, United States. I was like, oh, next on the, or next season on the USA. It's like, okay, we're like, what are we going to expect this year? So yeah, it's always good. But seriously, thank you so much for taking the time to share a little bit of your story, share more about the podcast, the idea, the concept, and all that stuff behind it. For the listeners, I've already plugged this 1,000 times, but you can grab the link in the show notes to do that. But where can they go to connect with you personally and directly? Like if someone just heard this episode and was like, love Katie, want to get to know her, or just wants to follow along, see how the journey goes, where do they go?
Yeah, we have a website, sweetsuccesspodcast.com, and same Instagram handle at Sweet Success Podcast. And that's sweet, like hotel suite, SUITE. And then for me, I'm on Instagram at by Katie Cline. So BY Katie. And then my last name is spelled like Patsy, CLINE, which you will probably misspell a million times before you find me, but I hope you find.
No, we have a Rafi Cline, but she's KLINE. And then you're CLINE. So I'm like, okay, yeah.
Lots of us Clines.
Yeah, you Clines out there. One of my best friends in middle school and in high school, James Cline. Shout out to you if you ever listen to the pod. But we haven't talked in forever. But yeah, he is. I always think of him whenever I hear Cline. So sorry, random tangent thought.
It's James.
Yeah. What up, James? Seriously though, this has been so much fun. I can't wait to have you back on the show because I know there's going to be many opportunities for us to get on the mic. I'm definitely excited to have you more on the mic now with Sweet Success. It's going to be so much fun. So,
well, and we have to tell your listeners too that you're going to be on the show as well, because obviously with Will's incredible hospitality background, I want to dive into some of the questions that we haven't gotten to hear from him yet. So stay tuned.
Oh, Katie's been, knowing you probably have a list of questions that no one has ever asked me on other shows that you've probably listened to. So
Let me tell you, I'm a hyper researched person. So when someone will come on the show, I will have listened to every podcast interview they've ever done. I will have read every interview they've ever done. And if I'm bringing up something again, it's because it's important. But otherwise, I want to get to like chapter 2, as we said. So
I love it. I love it so much. Well, Slick Talkers, you know exactly what to do. Do all the stuff in the show notes, grab links, follow, subscribe, connect, and build that relationship with Katie, because this is not the last time that you're going to hear from her. Katie, I'm so thankful again to have you on the show and to work with you. I know Kelsey's excited. I just know we're all excited. So if you are in the market for a new podcast, check out Sweet Success wherever you get your podcasts. And like always, we'll see you guys again next week.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.